Hey there, my name is Salandrak and welcome back to my Terraria version 1.4 Journey's End Beginner's Guide series. Last episode we took down the Destroyer, and in this one we'll be tackling the twins, Retinazor and Spazmatism. As with all my boss guide videos, I'll cover spawning the boss, fight mechanics, arena preparation, loot, and strategies and gear loadouts for all classes and difficulty levels. Timestamps are down in the description, and let me know down in the comments if you have any preferred strategies or loadouts that I didn't cover. Now let's get to it. I'll keep the spawning part brief as I've already covered mech boss spawning mechanics in the previous video, but as with the Destroyer, the twins can randomly attack you in a hard mode world if at least one evil altar has already been smashed. The message you'll get when night falls if the twins are inbound is, "This is going to be a terrible night." If you want to spawn the eyeballs manually, then you'll need to craft a mechanical eye at your hard mode anvil using 3 lenses, 5 iron or lead bars, and 6 souls of light. The boss itself is much like the Eye of Cthulhu, but now there are 2 eyes instead of 1. The green irised eyeball is known as Spazmatism, and it shoots green flames that can give you the Cursed Inferno debuff. It hits for a decent chunk of damage, and the debuff causes damage over time and prevents life regeneration, so pretty nasty. The other eye, Retinazor, has a red iris and will shoot lasers at you. Overall, the lasers do less damage than the cursed flames, so it's generally best to focus on getting Spazmatism down first and then finish the fight by downing Retinazor. Each eye has a separate health bar, and each eye will have 2 phases that can be triggered independently of the other eye. In the first phase, each eye will shoot their fireballs and lasers respectively 9 times each, with Retinazor trying to stay diagonally above you, while Spazmatism will try to stay a little way off to the side. After the 9 shots, they'll do some charge attacks, Spazmatism doing 10 short distance charges, while Retinazor will do 4 long distance charges. After the charges, they'll try to return to their preferred positions on whichever side they ended up on when they finish their charges. But because it might take one or the other longer to get back into position, the timing of their shootings and charges respectively will generally get out of sync with each other pretty soon after the fight has started. For the most part though, you just want to keep your distance, dodging the projectiles when they're shooting, and avoiding contact with them when they're charging. High movement speed and a good pair of wings will greatly help in this fight, and you should experiment with moving different directions, such as diagonally up and down, vertically, or primarily moving horizontally to avoid the projectiles and charges to find out what works best for you. I personally tend to like moving up and down at the start of the fight, but once I get them both on one side, tend to prefer more horizontal movement. Phase 2 starts when each eye individually reaches 40% of its maximum health. Like the Eye of Cthulhu, the eye entering Phase 2 will spin around, shed its iris, and get some new attacks. Spazmatism will grow some teeth, and rather than shooting fireballs, will emit a shorter ranged, constant stream of fire for about 6 seconds while moving slowly towards you, and will then do 6 fast and long range charges. You really do not want to get hit by the fire stream. In Phase 2, Retinazor will sprout a laser gun, and will alternate between shooting lasers with a medium rate of fire while trying to stay directly above you, followed by a fast rate of fire from the side. As Retinazor's health goes down, the rate of fire and number of shots at each tempo will go up, so be sure to keep moving and do your best to dodge the lasers. Generally speaking, it works best to move to the side when Retinazor is trying to position above you, and to fly upwards and or fall down when it moves to your side to fire rapidly. Unlike Spazmatism though, Retinazor will not do any charges once it enters Phase 2. On Expert and Master mode, things get a bit more hectic. In addition to the eyes having more health and dealing more damage, they'll also move faster, and in Phase 1 the rate of fire and number of shots before doing charge attacks will increase as each respective eye's health goes down. Phase 2 is more or less the same as in Classic, other than the eyes moving much faster and hence making dodging much more challenging. If you're on Classic difficulty, your regular fighting arena should be sufficient, though making some of it much wider is probably a good idea. Moving up and down and side to side in Phase 1 is generally enough to avoid taking much damage from the projectiles, and you can simply run away from Spazmatism's shorter range charges. Retinazor's charges can be dealt with just like the Eye of Cthulhu, by trying to move at a 90-degree angle from its position relative to you just as it starts to charge. Focus your fire on Spazmatism, and once it enters Phase 2, you'll want to move horizontally away from it when it's shooting its fire stream, which should also help you avoid the lasers and then dodge its charges the same way you did Retinazor's charges in Part 1. Once Spazmatism is down, you'll of course shift your attention to Retinazor, and once it's in phase 2, you'll generally want to move away from it when it's trying to shoot from above you, and then fly upwards and or fall down when it moves to shoot rapidly at you from the side. Use healing potions as needed, and before you know it, the boss will be defeated. Because of the boss's increased movement speed and rates of fire in Expert and Master mode, I highly recommend a slightly different setup for these difficulties, which requires already having the Steampunker NPC, and hence the reason I covered the Destroyer first. Once you have the Steampunker, you'll want to buy the Blend-O-Matic crafting station, and then use it to convert a bunch of stone blocks and gel into asphalt. Make several hundred blocks of asphalt, as you're going to want a really long runway to make this fight much easier, especially on Master mode. Be sure to place arena buffs such as heart lanterns, campfires, and stars in bottles spread across the runway. We do all this because asphalt has the wonderful property of letting you run really fast, which will allow you to outrun Spazmatism's fireballs and either of the boss's charges, while also keeping out of Retinazor's firing arc most of the time. Do your best to avoid taking too much damage when the fight starts, and the bosses are likely on opposite sides of you. But once they start their first round of charges, try to get them off to one side or the other, and thereafter try to keep them both on the same side, always keeping your distance from them. Keep moving back and forth across your runway, and soon enough you'll emerge victorious over your second of the 3 mechanical bosses. As for loot, when each eye is separately defeated, it has a 10% chance to drop its trophy. When the second of the 2 is downed, it will always drop a decent amount of gold, between 25 to 40 souls of sight, 5 to 15 greater healing potions, and a bunch of hallowed bars, 15 to 30 on classic difficulty, and 20 to 35 on expert and master mode. All difficulties also have a 1 in 7 chance to drop the vanity slot twin mask. On expert and master mode, the second eye will drop a loot bag that contains most of the loot, with the mechanical wagon piece always appearing. In Master mode, the fight has a 25% chance to reward you with a pair of eyeballs vanity pet, and of course a 100% chance to give you the Twins relic. As for what you can make with the Souls of Sight, there are 3 new weapons you'll be able to make that don't require any other mech boss souls. The Magical Harp is a magic weapon crafted at your hard mode anvil using a harp purchased from the wizard, along with 20 crystal shards from the Underground Hollow, 8 Souls of Night, and 15 Souls of Sight. It's a pretty decent weapon that has infinite piercing and is able to bounce off walls. The Rainbow Rod is another magic weapon and is basically an upgraded version of the Magic Missile or Flame Lash, and is crafted from 10 crystal shards, 2 unicorn horns, 10 pixie dust, 7 souls of light, and 15 souls of sight. And for summoners, we've got the Optic Staff, which summons multiple pairs of Retina Minis and Spazma Minis that will shoot lasers and charge at enemies respectively. This is likely a decent minion upgrade for all classes. Other items you can craft with Souls of Sight include the Soul of Sight in a bottle, the Logic Sensor, and the Fairy Bell. To learn more about these items, check the wiki, and if you want to know what else you can make from hollowed bars, please refer back to my video on the Destroyer. Let's shift gears now and talk about gear loadouts for each class. Because the eyeballs are really good at keeping their distance from you when they're shooting in phase 1, and because you'll want to be constantly moving throughout the fight no matter your class, you're going to need to use a ranged damage dealing option that lets you focus fire on Spazmatism first and then Retinazor. As such, the actual fighting strategy for all classes is basically the same as was discussed earlier. For armor, all classes will want to use hollowed armor if another mech boss has already been defeated. Otherwise, your strongest hard mode armor, such as adamantite, titanium, or the hybrid sets of frost armor or forbidden armor, should work just fine. For accessories, all classes are going to want a good pair of wings, and the best options at this point if you haven't already defeated any mech bosses are the frozen wings, harpy wings, fairy wings, or if the angler has been nice to you, thin wings. If you have already defeated a mech boss, you could also upgrade to the bee wings, butterfly wings, bat wings, or flame wings. Check the wiki to see how to farm the ingredients needed to craft all of these options. You'll also want your best pair of speed boots, and because mobility is so important, you'll want a cobalt shield or its upgrades, the obsidian shield or ankh shield, in order to prevent knockback when you get hit by anything. Beyond that, use your class emblem and additional DPS or defensive accessories to suit your playstyle and difficulty level. On Expert and Master mode, the Shield of Cthulhu will greatly increase your dodging ability, and the Worm Scarf or Brain of Confusion are also decent options to add in. Melee only has a few options for fighting this boss, as there aren't many melee weapons at this stage of the game that are able to do damage at range. But as with the Destroyer, the best option on all difficulties is going to be the Shadow Flame Knife that drops from the Goblin Warlocks of the hard mode Goblin Invasion. These knives have great range and will allow you to keep your distance and focus fire Spazmatism before shifting your attention to Retinazor. Other options that work about as well are the light discs that you're able to craft after defeating the Destroyer, or the banana ring that drops from the clowns of the hard mode Blood Moon. On classic difficulty, you can also use a good yo-yo along with the yo-yo bag accessory, but overall it requires being a bit too close for comfort on expert and master mode. For additional accessories, the power glove will increase your melee attack speed, and other good options include the stinger necklace for some armor piercing and health regeneration. As a sharp contrast to melee, rangers have a ton of options available to them for downing the twins. Any of the higher tier hard mode repeaters available at this point will work perfectly fine on all difficulty levels, and you'll likely want to use Holy Arrows or Ichor Arrows in a Crimson world and maybe Cursed Arrows in a Corruption world. If using arrows, you'll want to grab a Magic Quiver and either of its upgrades, the Molten Quiver, or in a Corruption world, the Stalker's Quiver. If you prefer guns and have already defeated the Destroyer, you can upgrade your Mini Shark into the Mega Shark, which works great on all difficulty levels. It's probably the best gun option, but the Clockwork Assault Rifle also works decently well, as does the Gatligator if you've managed to pick one up from the Traveling Merchant. If you spent time in the hard mode jungle and gotten an Uzi, it's also good at this stage of the game. And if your aim is good, you can also just go with the Onyx Blaster. For bullets, feel free to use Crystal Bullets, Cursed Bullets in Corruption Worlds, or Ichor Bullets in Crimson World, they all do just fine. On classic difficulty, you can also use either the Dart Rifle in Corruption Worlds or the Dart Pistol in Crimson Worlds, and any type of dart. Do note though that crystal darts will tend to bounce between the eyeballs, so you might get both eyes in phase 2 at the same time. Overall though, I probably wouldn't use darts on expert or master mode, and would instead stick to guns or repeaters. I'll briefly note that I'm not a fan of the Daedalus Stormbow for this fight for the same reason that I don't like darts, as it's quite a bit harder to focus your fire on one boss or the other, but if you want to give it a try, let me know how it goes for you down in the comments. Like rangers, mages also have lots of options for downing the twins, especially on classic difficulty where just about anything will get the job done. My personal favorites, particularly for expert and master mode, include the Crystal Storm Spellbook, the Sky Fracture, and if you've done enough fishing in the hollow to get it, the Crystal Serpent. This is a very mana hungry fight though, so you'll definitely want to either manually chug mana potions or save yourself the hassle and use a mana flower or any of its upgrades to automate that process. By contrast though, summoners like Melee don't have a lot of fun toys to play with at this stage of the game, and I found Summoner to be the hardest class for beating this boss in Expert and Master mode. On Classic difficulty, you can get away with using the Obsidian Outlaw armor set along with just about any whip and summoned minion. Decent options for whips include the Firecracker, the Cool Whip, and if you've already downed the Destroyer, the Durandal is probably your best option. For minions, the Spider Staff works well enough on Classic difficulty, but for Expert or Master mode, I found the Blade Staff to generally perform best, with the Sanguine Staff being the second runner-up. One of the key tricks for summoners, especially on the higher difficulties, is to avoid hitting Retinazor with your whip while you're focusing on Spazmatism, as hitting Retinazor will cause your minions to switch targets, and you really don't want the laser eye to shoot faster while you're taking down Spazmatism. Be sure to use your runway to your advantage and outrun Spazmatism's phase 2 charges, which is the best time to lay into it with your whip for some added damage. Once you get Spazmatism down though, Retinazor is really quite easy, as you'll be able to whip it with impunity while your minions eat it up. If you want to really play it safe though, try to stay as far away from the bosses as you can and let the minions do all the work for you. And that's it for the second of the mechanical bosses, the twins. This is definitely the sort of fight where it can take some practice to get familiar with the different movement patterns of each eye, and having a big asphalt runway really helps immensely, particularly on expert and master mode difficulties. Please let me know down in the comments what setup you used to get your first kill on this boss, and if you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!